So by the summer of 1778, a lot of people thought that the war had finally turned. The Battle of Monmouth had happened, and the Continental Army hadn't collapsed. And, well, we had the involvement of the French, and from the outside, it looked like, well, momentum was really starting to build. But Washington didn't quite see it that way. What he saw was more akin to exhaustion. The Army was still short on supplies. It seems like I keep saying that in every episode, but it happened. It's a continuation here. You still have men that were leaving when their enlistments were over, and Congress still had the slows, and the money was still tight, and really nothing just would have felt settled at all. And Washington knew something that most people didn't want to admit yet, and that this war wasn't even close to being over. The British were still quite powerful. They still controlled the major cities. And now they started to shift their strategy south, which meant that the war wasn't ending. It was going into a period of change. So Washington didn't spend time, talking about victory a whole lot during this particular period. Instead, he kept mentioning and talked about endurance. It was all about keeping the Continental Army together, about avoiding mistakes that couldn't be undone, and about surviving long enough for the war just to kind of continue to move on, kind of grind until the British would just wear themselves out. Now, it doesn't really sound heroic, but it was quite realistic, because at this stage, winning didn't mean defeating the British, defeating Britain. It meant not losing the army, not losing public support, and not losing control of the situation. And Washington understood that every battle risked undoing everything. So he continued to stay cautious. He avoided the big dramatic fights. He watched the enemy. He waited for conditions that actually mattered. And that patience really continued to frustrate people. They wanted, momentum. They wanted action. They wanted a clear path forward. But Washington was seeing something else. He saw a long war. But he also realized that it was a tired country, and an army that survived if it was protected from unnecessary risk. And by this point in the war, Washington wasn't trying to, win glory and accolades for himself. He was just trying to make sure that the revolution lived long enough, just to have a future at all.